Friday morning, can't control it. Fired up and counting every minute. Hands are shaking, eyes are burning. The time has come, yeah, this is not a warning. The week was just so long, we had to let it go. Our problems disappeared, we're not tied up anymore. The weekend is here. Sunday calls, we are sick and tired of it. Up and down, can you feel it? Up and down.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Johansson show. It's Kurt. Today, joining me, I've got Vince Valor. Vince, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on.
Now I'm excited. Like when I've been doing some of the research, I was like, "Oh, that's gonna be cool that we can talk about." So really looking forward to learn more about your career and especially like your local wrestling scene and how is the wrestling at the moment with obviously the pandemic that's been going on. How have you been finding the whole situation for this past year?
It's crazy to go from wrestling so often to having that all taken away from you. And wrestling around here, like I'm from the Buffalo, New York area, so there's like nothing around here. There is like you could do like wrestling at your like a training facility in front of no audience, but it's tough to even be able to do that.
Yeah.
But there's no way to make money off of it. That's the thing. You're not able to have a full audience with the restrictions on capacity around here.
Yeah. Like before we was recording, you mentioned you last wrestled like October time. So was that in front of like a reduced capacity, or was that one of the no fans kind of shows?
It was near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so I had to venture out a little bit for that.
Yeah.
But I believe even the capacity for that, I think it was reduced to like 30 or 40%. See,
Wow.
I think the maximum for that was 85 people when they're used to having probably around 200 to 300 for that audience.
How do you find that? Like, obviously, it isn't. At least you've got some people that when it's not the numbers you used to get in. How do you respond to that as a wrestler?
It cut out a little bit. Could you repeat that?
Okay. So like with the whole reduced fans and things like that, how do you respond to that? Because I know wrestlers, you feed off that adrenaline. Would you still be able to do that with the reduced audience?
So even like as a wrestler, you work in front of big crowds, work in front of smaller crowds. So working in front of 5 to 10 people is nothing new. We've all been there at one point. It's just it's different, but like those people paid, they're still there. They're still there to see a show. It's just a matter of adjusting the environment of it because with the rules and the restrictions, like, yeah, there's less people, but there's also the rules of like, all right, don't go anywhere near the fans. Don't high five the fans, anything like that. So you have to be able to adjust to that sort of thing.
Yeah. What was the audience like? Because here in the UK, we've not had any fans. When we finally do get to go to wrestling shows again, the audience and the crowd are going to be very amped and psyched and very upbeat. What was the audience like for you, despite being reduced capacity? Were they all very lively and just good to be back?
Oh yeah, they're just very rowdy as usual. It's for as much as us wrestlers like miss being able to wrestle, it's tough, just as much tough for the fans of not being able to go to the events. So once they're able to go back to them, yeah, it's an exciting feeling for them as well.
Yeah, but so to take it back then, like, how did you get started in wrestling? Like, it's not just something everybody's like, I'm just gonna go make the towns, get thrown around for a living. Like, how did you first come across wrestling and realize this is what you want to do?
So it started for me. When I first fell in love with wrestling, I was about 6 years old. My mother took me to this daycare, and like everybody has the cliche story of, oh yeah, I saw Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. That's when I fell in love with it, brother. Like, no, that's people feel like they have to give that sort of answer. That's not the case for me. So I went to this daycare, and like they had all the figures and all the movies and the video games and whatnot. So like that was when I first started to be like, all right, this is pretty cool. And like as I kept going to go back and go back and go back, so like that was sort of the thing I bonded with the other kids there over. So I started to learn a little bit more about it there. And then it got to a point where we would get in trouble for it because we would practice the moves on each other. And then a phone call was made to my mother, and you can imagine she wasn't very happy about that. But the passion of that never left me. I guess wrestling is one of those things that like a lot of people, they love it as a kid, but they grow out of it and they are passionate about other things. I never grew out of it. Like I've been passionate about it since then. So I watched over the years, go to the events as much as I could until I became of age. I was at 17 years old. I was just graduating high school when there was one of my friends in high school. We bonded a lot over it. So we started to research different schools of where we could go to like actually train to do this. Because at the time we were like wrestling on a trampoline in his backyard just for fun. Like everybody started somewhere with that,
Stuff,
but we wanted to take it seriously and go to an actual school. So we got a couple of buddies together. We went to a place in Rochester, New York, Upstate Pro Wrestling. So that was where a lot of us got our start. But for me, I bounced around a couple different schools. Since then, I ended up finishing my training at the Neo Wrestling Dojo in Niagara Falls, Ontario.
Oh, brilliant. Who was it that was your trainers at the dojo?
So in Rochester, we were trained under Cameron Black, formerly known as Gabriel Saint.
Okay.
And where I finished my training in Canada, it was Tiberius King was the head trainer there.
What prompted you change into Canada?
So when I started in Rochester, like I had a lot more going on at the time to where like if I wanted to start wrestling, I wanted to do it right and do it to where I could have a longer career with it. So I was working full time. I was going to school full time. I was in a relationship. I wanted to put all that aside to put everything I had into wrestling. But then like once I started to get more serious about it, I was like, okay, like, here's another school that's a lot closer to home for me. Like, because I live in Niagara Falls, New York. Like, so it's easier to just cross the. I mean, I don't want to say it's easy to cross the border into Canada because there were nights where like I'd be waiting at the border for a good 3 hours just to get to training.
Yeah.
So, but it was closer to home for me, so that made the decision a lot easier to go there.
Oh well. What was the difference in the coaching styles? Was there any difference between Rochester and when using?
Anywhere you go,
Canada?
it's very disciplined. Like so, like you're not going to get it easier one way or another as far as where you go to train. It's all a matter of who you're around, like who you become comfortable with as far as who you go to for your training. So I was lucky enough to be able to train at both. Where like I trained in Canada, but I still kept those relationships going in Rochester and in Buffalo and Western New York. So I was able to wrestle on both sides of the border. So that was good for me. But yeah.
Oh, brilliant. How did you just because obviously wrestling's just one part of the puzzle. You've got to be thinking of character and the style. How did you come up with Vince Valor? Like, who is Vince Valor?
Oh wow, it's a great question actually. So I'm not quite sure how to answer it. Like, who is Vince Valor? Where did that come from? It's just something that like I don't know. They're told, all right, just pick a name, something like that. So I wanted to like find something that had some sort of meaning. Valor is meant for courage and bravery. So that was something I wanted to stand for when I became a wrestler. So that name kind of stuck with me. The Invincible moniker is something that I kind of ran with. Like I played football in high school, and that was like sort of like a nickname back then. So I kind of ran with that. But for when you want to become a wrestler and like come up with these characters and different gimmicks, you look to your biggest inspirations. For me, my biggest inspiration in all of wrestling is Eddie Guerrero. Like everything from his promos to his in-ring work to his passion of the business, I wanted to be Eddie Guerrero. That was my biggest inspiration to try and emulate.
Wow, like what was it about Eddie that captivated you?
So everything he did inside and outside of the ring, you could look and tell by his movements, his actions, everything. Like it wasn't just for show. It wasn't just for the money. He was passionate about this. This is what he loved to do, and I wanted to emulate that the best I could.
Yeah, I always remember, especially when I was a little bit younger, I hated Eddie just because he. And then when you grow up and you start looking back, you can just appreciate just how good he was. Like it was all the little things that he was doing. And if there was one thing that you've taken from Eddie to apply to yourself, what would that be?
I think it was his ability to be able to have a great match with anybody, because he could go out there and have a great match with a Rey Mysterio, a Kurt Angle, a Chris Benoit, any of those names. But he could also go have a great match with a JBL or a Brock Lesnar. So it was his ability to, and that's something I've always tried to bring out of myself is like, okay, I can have a good match with this person, but maybe not that person. I wanted to be to a point where I could go out there and have a good match with anyone.
Yeah. What style of match do you prefer, though?
What style of match?
Yeah.
For me personally, like as much as I watch Eddie Guerrero and try to study him, like obviously I'm a little bit bigger than he is, so I try to like wrestle more of a powerhouse style. But I still able to watch those type of matches to learn as much as I can from that.
So when you've got your opponent, though, do you like it another powerhouse where you just two big horses going at it, or do you prefer working with somebody like Eddie that's great working the bigger guys?
So it's every match is going to be different in that type of story. You got to tell the story of the big powerhouse match. You got to tell a story of big versus small. So it's different. So I don't know if I have one preference other than another. I like to be able to have that type of variety where like there's certain situations where I'm the smaller guy, so you have to tell that story, that David versus Goliath battle, and vice versa. If I'm out there with the smaller guy, I could throw around. Or there's that big story of two hosses going at it. So it's just different to have that type of variety. But like I love that challenge of being able to go out there and tell a different story each time.
Yeah. So whilst we're on about like different stories and different styles, what's your thoughts on tag team wrestling? Because I know over your career you've had a couple of different Top Guns, and then more recently Game Over. What's your thoughts on tag team wrestling?
So my kind of start into my career in Western New York was in a tag team. You mentioned the Top Guns. That
Yeah.
was the guy that I wrestled with on the trampoline in the backyard. So we got our start into the business together,
Oh,
and
that's class.
that comes from. So when we started in Rochester, New York, they gave everybody nicknames, and he and I ended up getting the nicknames of Maverick and Goose. We're like, all right, let's run with this.
Which
So
one was Maverick?
I was Goose, but
Didn't end well for you.
no, it didn't stick very well. But it was. But no, that was kind of what we ran with for a little bit. We did the sunglasses, the bomber jackets. That was kind of the gimmick for a bit. And that was at a time too where, see, there's often cases where it's easier to get on shows as a tag team because it's hard to find good tag teams that like matching gear, matching gimmick, all that stuff. A lot of times you'll go on a show and you'll see just throwing together tag teams just to fill the card. But it's there. That was at a time where promoters were seeking out like, all right, like let's build the tag team division. So that benefited us a lot. We fed off each other a lot. And I think it was because we had that chemistry. Like we knew each other very well. We knew each other for back to the days of high school. So it was very easy to just everything just click like that.
Yeah, but so how does it feel that the guy that you used to wrestle on the trampoline with, doing all the backyard stuff as friends, then you become Buffalo Championship Wrestling Tag Team Champions? How does that feel? Because again, you're two kids just messing around, and then you've been trusted to be Tag Team Champs.
So it was huge. It was kind of like a dream come true for us. And like, it was awesome because the story didn't end there for us. Like we won those championships and then he went away for a little bit. He wanted to focus on some other things. And then he came back. We did a story about 2 years later, which ended in his last match. He actually ended up turning on me on my birthday. We ran a little story from there, ended with the last man standing match that was his big send off. So it was good to have everything come full circle and tell that story. And it's something we still talk about to this day.
Yeah, like to do that with, again, somebody that you're so close with. Now, I know when you are good friends, you get that chemistry as a tag team, but you also get that chemistry as opponents. And when you're telling that story of him turning on you, you've got that last man standing. What do you think you had the best chemistry with? Teaming together or trying to beat the living shit out of each other?
So I think, see, it was kind of like we never left off when when he came back. We first started tagging a little bit. Like it was like, all right, we're getting our groove a little bit. And up until that point, we've never wrestled each other. It's always been side by side. So it was tough to, as much as we'd wrestle each other on the trampoline, it was tough to sort of develop that chemistry. Like, all right, now we got to wrestle each other. Now we got to see how this works out. So we ran with the story for a little bit. We only had 2 singles matches out of it. We did one match and then the last man standing match. The first match wasn't that good, dude. Like we realized, all right, like maybe we don't have that chemistry going against each other. There's a lot of things we got to work on. So the first match wasn't that great. So it was tough to think like, all right, like we need to this is the last match. This is the time to go out. We need to develop that chemistry. So there's a lot of talking, a lot of thinking, a lot of getting on the same page about things. And it's easier to do that too with like hardcore matches, last man standing matches. You can rely on your environment, rely on weapons, rely on the audience to be as much into it. And I thought it was just a perfect story ending for him and for us as a tag team and as rivals. Like, it was the biggest show of the year for the local company. It was in our hometown. It was huge for us. So it was a really good ending for that.
What was the audience's reaction like throughout the whole of that?
They loved it because a lot of them knew the story going into it. Like, for as much as they might not have been at every event, might not have seen all the behind the scenes that went into it, but they like fans follow you on social media. They see things. It's like they know the story that went into it. They know what that match meant to both of us. So the crowd was where they needed to be for it. Yeah,
definitely. Would you say that's one of your best like crowd moments, or do you have any other particular moments that stand out?
So there's another opponent on my list that's like that means just as much to me as that rivalry, and that's with big time Bill Collier. He's my brother-in-law. He and my sister met because she went to one of my events, and like they got a baby, they got engaged. Like that was how their story began. So I think it was about 2 years later after the last man standing match with Matt, I started this story with Bill in Erie, Pennsylvania. And that was at a time too where, like, I don't want to say fans don't believe, but like they become smarter to things. They want to feel like they're in the know. They know what's going on. So it was all right. Let's test that. Let's see how much we can get them to believe into something. So he was on top at the time. He was their hero. He had just won. They called it the 3 Wishes tournament. He wins the tournament. He gets 3 wishes. On the 3rd wish, he got his heavyweight championship match. So I'm hanging behind the merch table. I've been doing this for a couple months now, just slowly watching his matches behind the merch table. Nobody thought anything of it. It was very inconspicuous. As he's about to finish the match, I hop the barricade, grab a fluorescent light tube front of the ring, and smash it over his back. So the audience was in awe. People were crying. People were taking their kids out of the building. This is about a week before Christmas, so that was their Christmas gift to Erie, PA, was me smashing the light tube over their hero, costing the championship.
How did your sister feel about that?
She had no idea of it. That was the beauty of it. We didn't tell anybody. The only people that knew were the two of us, his opponent, and the promoter. We didn't tell anybody in the locker room, and we didn't want that leaking out that this is what was going to happen. But we ran with that for close to a year, actually, and it told such a great story because people were believing. And like for the first couple months of that program, we didn't touch. Like we just jump right into match. Like that was the big story, was him finally being able to get his hands on me. And for months, that was all the audience wanted to see, was him give me that knockout punch, and it just didn't happen. But it went on for close to a year. It ended in a steel cage match, which the rule was the only way to win was by knockout. So that was finally when he got his finish as a knockout punch. So that was finally when he got his revenge on me.
Ah, nice. But, was that your first cage match, or did you work cage before that?
That was my first of 2 cage matches. I did one just this past year, but that was special for me. That was a big moment. We did a couple other big gimmick matches before that. We did. They gave me a manager at the time to sort of like throw him in harm's way whenever Bill would try to get his hands on me. So we did a match where he was locked in a cage outside of the ring, so he couldn't get involved. And then we did another one. We did a fans bring the weapons one, so that was fun for both of us. But at the time, like, people believed so much that like they had to have a sign on the door because they hated me that much. They were like, okay, you can bring weapons. No guns, no firearms of any kind, no knives, nothing that could, no poisonous material, nothing that could kill Vince in this. But we tried to make them believe for so long that, like, he's my brother-in-law, so it's hard. Like, when we're not wrestling, like, I'm gonna be around him. We were like going all the time, like anything. Like we went to Disney World on vacation, so we took it as far as to like, all right, like, people follow us on social media, they can't see us doing these kind of things. So like, anytime there was a family photo on a vacation or a Christmas or anything, we wouldn't be in the same photo. We couldn't be seen in anything like that. We tried to make it seem that we were so far away from each other as possible.
Props to you for that, man. How does it feel that you're doing your job that well that your company has to do a notice to the fans saying, please don't bring guns, knives, or poisonous weapons?
I loved it because like that was my first chance to like really be a believable heel, to where like if I'm going to be a heel, I want to be the baddest heel on the card. I don't want to be that cool heel that's like you hate him, but you're still going to cheer him and shake his hand at the end of the show. I don't want any of that. I want that feeling of thinking like, all right, they might be waiting out of my car ready to fight me. They're going to bring a knife. They're going to bring a gun. Like I want that feeling of knowing that I'm hated that much to where they're going to try to take my life from me.
It's that whole like that old Dudley Boys ECW kind of feel, and I think that's a lost art form. Like one of my friends, he was like one of the top wrestlers here in the UK, and whenever we go travel, like make sure you don't cheer for me. I'm like, don't worry. I was like, anytime I get to call you, anytime I can call you that's great. So he was always one of those where he didn't like the being that cool heel and stuff like that. Like, yeah, on the same card, you had people that was trying to portray heel, but they'd start a match with just like the heel doing a running drop kick to the babyface, and it's like, would you really do that? Or doing standing shooting star presses, and it's like you're popping the crowd more than the baby faces. It's not helping. So it's refreshing to see. Yeah, it's refreshing to see somebody with more of that old school mentality of, now, if I'm playing a heel, you're going to despise me. You're going to hate me. So going to the weapons then, what was like maybe the more surreal weapons you got from the fans?
One of them threw. So how they did it was they had a shopping cart at the front of the building. So like any fan that came in, they threw their weapon in the shopping cart. Someone brought a watermelon. We used that. Someone threw their bra in there, which is odd. It didn't get used at all, but it was in there.
Strangling with it.
Yeah. So we had some fun ones in there. We ended up using, I think that one of the biggest ones we used is a television monitor. We used they had the pool noodles wrapped in barbed wire, so we used that a little bit. I think we did. What did we do? It was thumbtacks for a finish. We did the power bomb under the thumbtacks. But yeah, we had some interesting weapons in there.
Brutal. Now, you mentioned one of two cage matches. Was your second cage match the War Games match?
Yes.
So obviously, the title in itself, War Games, it's been a historic match over the years, and it's kind of come back to fruition recently. Obviously, you have MLW that's been using the concept before. WWE was like, hey, no, we own that right. You can't use that name. And then they start doing it for NXT. You've got AEW planning to do the Blood and Guts match, which is essentially War Games. What was that like for you when you got told, right, Vince, we're putting you in a War Games match?
So that was another one of those year-long programs, and there was a lot in the making because, okay, so it was myself, Anthony Gaines, Kevin Bennett, and James Saga. We're sort of seen as like the newer generation, even though like I've been at this for 10 years. Kevin Bennett's been for 10 years. Like we're seen as the newer generation of Empire State Wrestling, which is the best of the best when it comes to the local wrestling in Western New York.
Yeah.
On the opposite side, you got Johnny Puma, Will Calrissian, Chris Cooper, and Kevin Grace. They're managed by the Caesar. Those are seen as the old guard. They were the ones that built the company. Like there wouldn't be Empire State Wrestling without that group of gentlemen. So like that in itself was a big selling point to me. Was like, all right, like this is sort of like the passing of the torch moment. Like they were gone for a while. They came back just for this program. So that in itself was a blessing to me that they came back just to work with us. And like just the amount, everything we did, like all the stories we told to lead up to that moment, that was big for all of us, considering like just the timing was right. Everything was there. Like old guard versus the new generation. It was at Wrestle Bash, the 10th anniversary of that, which was Empire State Wrestling's biggest show. Yeah. We had Devon Dudley on the card. We had, like it was a huge moment to be able to be in the main event of that 10th anniversary show. It was just huge for us.
Yeah, I bet. how did you feel about the match then? Because again, that's a lot of bodies, a lot of stuff can go wrong. Like, what's your experiences like in a War Games match?
So the hardest part was being able to structure it to like the timing of it. Like, all right, like you have to do this in a certain amount of time because then that clock's going off and here comes the next guy. So it's to be
Yeah.
able to either spread things out to get to that next timer or to cut things down because the timer's coming soon. So being out there for that match, everything felt so quick. Like you do this and all right, you already look up. There's the timer going off. But what added to the effect of it was the athletic commission around here is a real pain in the ass. They don't like these type of things. Like,
Yeah.
luckily the fans bring the weapons match that was in Pennsylvania where they're a little more easy about things. Here in New York State, they don't appreciate cage matches, war games. They hear anything like that, it's a red flag for them.
Wasn't it New York State that said Yokozuna wasn't fit to wrestle?
Yes, I just watched that documentary yesterday. I saw that. I was like, all right, New York State Athletic Commission. That doesn't surprise me. But like as the cage is going up, like the inspector shows up and he's questioning the safety of it. He's watching. He's ready to shut it down. I was like I'm watching from the back. I'm seeing this on the monitor. I was like, I love that. That adds to the effect of it. He says this isn't safe. We're still going out there and doing it anyway. Like that just made it seem that more real. So it was great to. Like as much as the commissioner didn't mean to be a part of it, he was a part of it, and it added so much more to it.
Yeah, but would you want to do War Games again?
Oh, absolutely. Like as much as it might be like I don't know, like people have this fear of cage matches, like and it can be nervous and can be intimidating the first time you see it going up and thinking like, all right, like I actually got to be in there. I got to wrestle in that, and I'm probably gonna get hurt. But like once you're in there, that adrenaline's pumping, like everything's like it just feels right. Like after that first cage match I had, I was like, all right, let me do one of these again next week. Like this is so much fun. Like, and especially after that War Games, like you have these cage matches. It's like, all right, you're hurting a lot in the next day, but it's like I want to do that some more. Like I love that feeling.
Yeah, I bet. Was it with Empire State that you teamed with Nunzio?
Yes, I teamed with Nunzio, MVP, and Hornswoggle at Empire State Wrestling. So I've had my fair share of tag team partners there.
Like what were those experiences like? First off, let's go with Hornswoggle because here you are, powerhouse with Hornswoggle. How was that chemistry?
Man, he was something. Let me tell you. He wasn't supposed to be on the card. He was there. I think they booked him just to do autographs and do an appearance. But the day of, he shows up. He's like, put me on the card. All right. you tell the guy no, like he wants to wrestle, we'll let him wrestle. And at the time it was supposed to, this is the show on my birthday that Matt turned on me. So it was supposed to be the two of us against a trio. They were the patron saints of pro wrestling. So it was supposed to be 2-on-3 handicap. They're like, all right, well, why not? We'll add Hornswoggle to this. He was fun. He wanted everything. He wanted to start the match. He wanted to finish. He wanted the hot tag. He wanted all of it. So it was like, all right, so what are we here for? What do you need us to do?
Especially, yeah. How do you find that? Because you see it on the internet where people are like, give people chance, stop bringing in that, say the legends where they get the big spots. And you mentioned Hornswoggle wanted to do the start, the hot tag, the finishes, but that match was purely because your tag partner was going to turn on you on your birthday.
Yeah.
How did that affect like the whole moment for you?
It just had to be a lot of reiterating that sentence. Like, all right, like you're the star. They're not here to see us. I mean, I don't want to say they're not here to see us, but like there's people that paid to see Hornswoggle. So like it's fine. You do what you got to do. Just know at the end of this, like this is the story we have to get across. My birthday is my best friend turning on me. So as long as we're there for that, like we're on board for the rest of it. So it wasn't like he did it in a selfish way. Like, all right, you kids take the back seat. I'm doing all this. No, he was willing and generous enough to be like, all right, like let me do this, do that. Because I think at that time, like he wasn't, I think he was freshly released. I think he got released maybe a month prior to this. Yeah. So it wasn't like he was on TV every week being able to have these type of matches to where like, all right, yeah, like he can't be on the TV telling them, yeah, I'm doing the hot tag, I'm doing the finish, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Like, I'll see you out there, kid. And no, like, so I don't want to make it seem like he took that advantage of us that way, to where it's like, all right, you kids just watch me work. But no,
He was just excited to be able to do it.
Yeah, he was going all these years with just being the comedy act on television. Now he's being able to wrestle. So like, we were along for the ride. It was fun to watch. It was fun to be a part of.
Yeah, definitely. What about MVP then?
MVP was awesome. He was one of the boys. He was very generous in that match. It was great to, and having worked with Hornswoggle and others prior, like, MVP was like, all right, well, you do the finish. What do you mean I do the finish? You're the big name here. You're the guy that they came to see. It's like, no, this is your hometown. You do the finish. Like, all right, like, and he was generous that way. We talked a lot after the match. He like, and that's the best part about it, is being able to talk and sit and learn from these guys.
Yeah.
And not only that, is it just that amazing experience of being able to be in the ring with them. And like, yeah, the MVP was great. I have nothing but great things to say about him.
That's what he comes across, that, cause like his persona, you wouldn't think that's the case, but then he does seem just so given. And you mentioned like talking to these guys. Like, what was the best bit of like advice, or what did you get to learn from working with MVP?
So he talked about like the I hate to peel back the curtain a little bit, but he talked about the experience of like going for a tryout and trying out these different gimmicks to see what impresses them the most.
Yeah.
One of the things he said that really stuck with me is like, you have to do something about your gimmick to where it makes kids be able to relate to it. He says you got to have the type of gimmick where an 8-year-old can imitate you.
Yeah.
Like the John Cena, you can't see me, the MVP, the ball and thing, like all that stuff. Like it's like, all right, that makes a lot of sense. You got to have that sort of like that thing about you that an 8-year-old can walk around and imitate you in front of your friends.
Have you tried incorporating anything like that?
I don't have anything quite that successful. I'm working on it, but.
So lastly, with Nunzio then.
Nunzio was great. So that one, it was an outdoor show. It was pouring rain. We were under a tent though, so we do this yearly show in Salamanca, New York, and it's a lot of us just see it as a night off because that audience is just there for everything. They're popping for a headlock takeover, a hip toss, little stuff like that, and they're just there for everything. So it was a fun experience. How that got set up is we got the mayor involved. The mayor of Salamanca came out and made the match. He had a couple of heels with their manager out there bullying him. He calls, all right, here's Vince Valor and Nunzio. They're taking you out. So it's like, so the mayor was excited to be a part of it. We were excited to be a part of it, but it was the environment of it. Like, that audience was there for everything. They loved every bit of it. But wrestling outside in the pouring rain, it was freezing out. This is probably near the end of October. So Nunzio was like, we're all sharing like the ring trailer as one locker room because we have nowhere else to go for this. Nunzio was like, all right, well, one of the referees drove me. Let's just go sit in his car and turn on the heat and call the match. It's like, all right, great. Like, everybody else is out there in their trunks in the freezing cold calling their match. We're gonna go sit in the heated car. Like, all right, how about that? But he was another one that was very generous about everything. He was like, all right, well, I'll do the hot tag. If you want to do the rest, you can do the promo at the beginning or the end or whatever you want, the finish, all that. It's like, and I'm not one that's like, all right, I have to get the finish. I have to do this. I have to do that. But yeah. It's cool to have that blessing from Nunzio because, like I said, we did the thing with the mayor with the promo leading up to it. He was like, "Oh, you did really good with the promo earlier on. You can we'll give you the mic at the end of it too." And like, it's like you look the part, you like all that. Like, you put me over well. I was like, "Wow, like this is big for me." Like
No, definitely. Like, despite the like horrendous weather conditions, then it seems like such a good atmosphere. Like, if that was in the middle of summer or something like that, I can imagine it'd just be like a day out, like a day off. The fact that the mayor's getting involved, and it just seems like it's just such a awesome vibe.
That's how it is a lot around here. We have this company here, Southern Tier Wrestling. They run a lot in the summertime. All these carnivals, festivals, they'll have wrestling at these shows. So like, I'm considered one of the top guys there just because I see those shows as like that's my bread and butter. I love those type of audiences. It's just so easy, and I don't want to make it seem like, all right, I just love the day off. Like, no, it's so much fun to be able to work those crowds, because around those towns that those shows are running in, that's really all they have. You drive through these small towns, like, wow, there really isn't a lot going on here. So when they have wrestling, it's a bigger deal for them. Like, and when we're only there a couple times a year, like it's huge for them. So they're there for every little thing.
Nah, that's great. So what about like PWR then? Obviously, I know you've been doing quite a lot with them. You've had the tag title runs. Like, what's it been like working for them?
So that's a different subject. That was where I had the long program with Big Time Bill Collier, and that meant a lot to me. I'm obviously not here to bury the company. Since then, they've undergone new ownership, and it was a struggle after that. It was
Okay.
it is what it is. I no longer work for them. I wish them the best, but it just didn't work out. It was the thing I miss most about there is the audience, the atmosphere. A lot of those fans deserve a lot better than what they're getting nowadays. But it was fun while it lasted, but I couldn't see myself there much longer.
Ah, fair enough. I know from back in the day though, didn't you have a dog collar match there?
I did with Brian Castle, and that was actually the night of when I smashed the light tube over Bill Collier. So I did the program for a couple months with Brian Castle. We had that fun dog collar match, and then later that night was when I smashed the tube over Bill Collier.
Ah, so now it's all adding up and stuff like that. So where was it that you was teaming with was Game Over?
So that started in Rochester, New York, for a company that kind of went under, IWF. We were tagging there for a bit. Won tag team championships there. We started to develop a little chemistry, and then we brought that over to Empire State Wrestling. We were both singles guys there for a little while. He was sort of a bit of on a losing streak. Like, I was hot at the time. It's like, all right, let's take him under my wing. Let's pick up everything that we're doing elsewhere and bring it here. And we've had a successful run there. So it's fun to be able to tell that story, to take him under my wing, help him build a little confidence. Now he's a tag team champion here. So it's fun. And the sky's the limit after that. So it was fun to be able to have that story be told there.
Yeah, definitely. So if you was to say like book your own show, so it's not going to be company exclusive, but you get to do that War Games match again. It's going to be the main event. You can pick your 3 tag partners and your opponent. What would that be?
Oh boy,
I'm putting you on the spot here. Apologies.
yeah, that's tough. So I think I'd keep my partners the same.
Yeah.
On the opposite side, wow, this is tough. Well, I'll take it to the guys that I've had the most chemistry with in the ring as far as my opponents, and that would be Matt Milan, Bill Collier. 2 others that I've had great matches and great memories with is Brandon Thurston and Cloudy. Like those are 2 smaller guys, very good technical wrestlers that bring out the very best in me, the same way Bill and Matt have. So those are the guys I feel that I can have the best matches with. So that'd be fun to be on the opposite side with. And obviously the teammates I have, just because over the years, those are the ones I've developed such a strong chemistry with.
Yeah, I know, brilliant. Well done there, because that was quite a brutal question, to be fair. So apologize. So what's next for yourself? I know pandemic's kind of halted quite a lot of things in terms of wrestling, but what goals do you have?
So coming up, actually, like pandemic's been tough, like especially being out of the ring for so long. Like a lot of us feel like the Undertaker wrestling once a year, so it's really tough. It's a matter of staying in shape and maintaining that physical conditioning.
Yeah.
So that's been my biggest goal, is to be in the best shape I can for when because you never know when it's going to come back. Like it could be like, all right, like things are reopened tomorrow. We're wrestling next week. Oh, what do you mean? I put on 40 pounds. I never wanted things to be like that. So I'm taking a day off as far as the gym and like making sure I'm still in shape for when wrestling does come back. So the goal right now is, I don't know if I should be saying this yet, but I'm wrestling at the Flower City Wrestling Academy coming in the next couple weeks.
Okay.
So they're doing like shows at their training facility, which is awesome for me because in Rochester that's the company that I got my start for. So it's fun that 11 years later, I'm able to go back there and wrestle with some of the newer ones coming up. So that's awesome for me. I'm excited about that. They're going to be doing stuff for YouTube, IWTV, stuff like that. So keep an eye out for that stuff. But one match that was supposed to happen during the pandemic that I can't wrap my mind around is my match with Tiberius King. We were supposed to do something at Empire State Wrestling. That was the big, that was the match for me. That was the guy that trained me. That was the one that made me who I am. So to have that teacher versus student battle, to be able to tell that story, that's one that I haven't been able to tell yet. And that's something I'm very much looking forward to. I don't know when it's going to be because the Canadian borders are open here, but once wrestling does come back officially, that's one match that I have to have.
Yeah, definitely. So before we go for further down the line for your career and stuff like that, what did you think to the Yokozuna documentary?
It was great. It was very eye-opening, and my biggest takeaway from that is there's a lot of bigger wrestlers out there, and a lot of them. I know a lot of bigger wrestlers. I consider them my friends, my brothers. I just hope that they watch that and see, all right, this guy didn't take care of himself. This could happen. This could happen to anybody. And I don't want to say that, be like, all right, you're gonna get fat and die. No, I just want them to I want them to be the best version of themselves they can be. So I hope that any bigger super heavyweight wrestler out there sees that and thinks all right, I don't want that to be me. Let me take care of myself before it gets worse.
Yeah, because it was just about 650 near the end, and it is sad to see somebody that was top of his game, especially with the family that he comes from and stuff. I thought it was really eye-opening, and hopefully people will, even for yourself, where Bret Hart mentioned it, where it was could I have been a better friend? Could I have picked up the phone a little bit more and stuff like that? Hopefully it'll give people maybe the nudge to speak to the friends if they're a bit more if they're concerned about it, and be like, look, if you haven't seen it, maybe check it out and watch it firsthand, just to make sure people are remaining safe. And because I know, especially with the super heavyweight, it can be, that's how it was billed. With Yokozuna, his attraction was how big he was, but then it gets to a time where he was too big.
And a lot of guys see it that way. It's all right, that's the attraction about me. It's I'm big. It doesn't matter if I work out or what I eat or whatever. I'm just a big guy. That's what they pay to see. But you got to remember too. You could be going out there asked to wrestle a 15-20 minute match. So if you're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, you're not going to be able to do that, and it becomes unhealthy for you. And you got to remember too, there's people paying to see this, so they want to see, and they notice every little thing nowadays. So they're going to see you putting on this 40, 50 pounds.
Yeah,
I knew what happened with Yokozuna, but just to watch that and hear it talked about in so much depth, it's wow, that's really scary. That's really eye opening.
Yeah, definitely. And it was just as bad as it. There's no fortunate way about it, but it is just fortunate that he went in his sleep, rather, because obviously he was over here in the UK on a tour. It was just a blessing that it didn't happen whilst in the ring.
Yeah.
What else have you been doing, trying to keep yourself busy during this pandemic? Then obviously you wanted to keep in shape in case hey, we're running next weekend, and you're like, oh crap. But what else have you been trying to do? You been watching anything, or?
There isn't a day to go that goes by where I don't watch any sort of wrestling. So I'm trying to and the WWE Network's great for that. IWTV is great for that. All these resources to be able to watch and study and learn as much as you can throughout these tough times. A lot of that, like I said, I spent a lot of time in the gym. Yeah. I won't go to the gym because of the conditions there. They only allow 10% or whatever it is. Everybody has to wear masks. I can't. That's not how I'm going to work out. So being fortunate enough to have a brother-in-law who's also a wrestler. We spent thousands of dollars building a home gym. So, and it's not little stuff like push-up bars and a medicine ball. Like we spent a lot of money building a quality gym to where we have everything we need. So like that's been huge for us. I do that. I love doing these podcast interviews. That keeps me very busy. Like I'm a part of a podcast studio in Buffalo here, so like it's fun to be able to do that. And like while I'm not in the ring in my underwear, it's fun to be able to still connect with an audience that way.
Yeah. What's your podcasting network about then?
A little bit of everything. It started with a football podcast. So we do a 5-day week football podcast. There's other ones on there too. There's video games, there's comic books, movies. Like there's a big network of all of it. So there's a lot going on there. The BICBP Radio Network is what it's called. That's the hub for all the podcasts in Western New York.
Ah, brilliant. I'll put that in the description for those that are interested. What shows are you on, particular on there?
I'm just on the 2 Point Conversation. That's the daily football one. But I've done guest spots on others too. But the 2 Point Conversation is the one I'm consistent on. Ah,
brilliant. I forgot what I was going to completely say. Yeah, I'll put that in the description for everybody to check out. And what is the long-term goal then? Like, obviously, you've said the short term of what was supposed to happen and it's been put on hold, but there's so many different companies out there now, especially with TV deals. There's the Ring of Honors, Impact, and MLW, but then you've got AEW, New Japan, Primetime, NWA. There's so much going on at the moment. Where would be your ideal home?
So it's tough to think about that because I feel like if any of those companies were going to happen for me, I feel like it would have by now. Before pandemic was the first time I got the chance to be backstage for SmackDown and do the extra work for that. So it was fun for me to say like, all right, I've been here. I could see how things are. And the biggest takeaway from that is the professionalism around there, and to sit and listen in and like, you're not supposed to be too far close to the talent, but like be invasive or be like anything like that. But you can sit there and listen and learn about the way they put together the matches, things like that, and take away whatever you can from that. So it's a big learning experience there. So that was something like big off the bucket list for me. As far as post-pandemic, I don't know. I don't want to say that's not the goal. That's not the dream, is to make it to one of those companies. But the way I'm seeing wrestling now, it's a young man's game. Like anyone that's hot on the indies right now, they're 3, 4, 5 years in. There's not a lot of guys that are 10, 11, 12 years in getting these shots. So as I get older, I just want to be able to do this for as long as I can, still remain some sort of relevancy, but just have fun, be happy with it. And if I see my friends who are younger in this getting better opportunities, I want to be happy for them. If something comes along for myself, I'm more than gracious to jump at it. But I feel like that time has passed, and there's nothing wrong with that. Times are changing, the business is evolving. It's just a young man's game now.
Okay. You mentioned going back to like where it all began. Is coaching something you've been doing or something you'd want to do?
That's something I'd love to do. It's I just don't know if the opportunity is there, and I would love for it to be. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and it's something like maybe when I'm out of the ring, that's something I might look into. But like for me, at least, you want to go to these schools that have that sort of the brand on it. Like, all right, you're trained by former WWE star so-and-so, former TNA star. Like, I don't have that sort of name credibility, but if there's anybody, like any of the newer guys, anybody that wants to come and learn from me, like I'm more than willing to teach and learn from my experiences, whether it be good or bad, because not every experience in this wrestling is a good one. Yeah. But yeah, that's something I'm all obviously open to. I love to be able to teach and give back and learn what I can.
Because like you mentioned yourself and Bill building this super gym of yours, like, is it big enough for a ring or some mats?
It's not big enough for a ring. It's we're sort of confined to his attic right now. Yeah. So I mean but
I'm just picturing your sister being sat there just watching TV, and there's a troop of trainees just walking through the house to go into the attic.
she deals with a lot of it because she's right below us, and she has a newborn baby. She's my baby niece. She's 4 months old, so she's trying to take a nap, and all she hears is the weights banging up there. So she has a tough enough time dealing with that. But that is something we've talked about. Like it's funny that you mentioned that because we have talked about opening a facility and buying a ring to be able to do that sort of thing. So I guess maybe that is the long-term goal, is to be able to do that.
Yeah, definitely. But no, like, where can people like find some of your work? So, for example, like Empire State, where can you watch their shows? Can you watch them online?
A lot of their stuff is either on their Facebook page, or I know our producers uploaded a lot of it to IWTV. Like, that's huge for a lot of the independent wrestling companies right now for everybody to check out that content. But a lot of their stuff is on YouTube, but everything's on IWTV, all that stuff.
Oh, brilliant. Vince, like, thanks for coming on, man. It's been good learning more about like your local wrestling scene. Again, that's what I kind of build my show on, is looking. I've done Singapore, China, and Norway. Like, I'll just try and look. So it's interesting to see like the smaller nitty gritty, and just like it. I've got to say, like, the storytelling that you've had throughout your career has been really impressive. It's probably my favorite form of wrestling, is the ones where there's that story behind it. And when you've been telling like the stories with Bill and stuff like that, I think that's the entertaining stuff. That's what brings crowds back, in my opinion. So it's good to see that you've got that mentality of, if you're a villain, I'm hoping you're going to be near my car ready to stab me and stuff like that. So props to you.
It's the storytelling part of it. Like, you can go out there and go through the motions, go through the moves, go through the whatever super kick or dive you want to do. And I understand that's what's hot in wrestling right now. But like, when you're seeing that 10 to 12 times on the same card, your story is the same as everyone else that's being told. And a lot of times the audience might not be with it, but like. Yep. A lot of guys go into this with the mentality of like, all right, like, we called this in the back, so we can't change it out there. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. There's times where you go out there with no plan, no rhyme, no reason. You just got to feel out whatever that audience wants you to give them. If you're doing one thing, it's not working, you got to give them another. And if that's not working, you go to plan Z.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the biggest thing, is being able to tell a captivating story to them, and not just in a way of where you're doing these flashy moves and maneuvers. You got to be able to show your face. You got to sell like every little thing about it. There's a story being told, the story of good versus evil, and that's something that the audience got to bite on. It's got to be able to get behind it. So
yeah, definitely. And I think it's one of those where, especially when I look back, there would be certain matches where I'm like, oh, this match. But when I start talking about what I liked about the match, I spend more time talking about the build rather than the match itself. Yeah. And it's just a culmination of it all. And I ended up flying to Chicago for All In before AEW became a thing. And the thing that stood out for me was Cody and Nick Aldis, because it wasn't about, again, super kick or like a lot of, I guess, indie darling like wrestling fans now. That'd be the one where people wouldn't care about, because they're not doing all the dives and the flips and the super kicks and things like that. But best atmosphere I've ever been a part of, because they just told that story, and before they even touched, had a better reaction than anything else on the card.
The story was already there with the NWA heavyweight title with Dusty Rhodes and everything like that. So that was a story to build off of. The story was already written for them, so it was just a matter of them delivering with the match. That was huge. I think that was the best match on the card. Yeah,
definitely. Like, I still, even when I check it back, it's one of those goosebump moments as a fan when I check it out. I always remember we ended up watching it like the full show when we got back. Hotel, we didn't have, was in an Airbnb, want too much to do, we've already drank way too much alcohol on that trip, and was all kind of like, don't know if we can do it again. So it was like, right, order some food in, we'll watch it on Fight. And then it was like, on the plane home, I've got Fight opening and just watching that match, I think. And it is that where I think with the stuff with Bill, every time I mentioned, oh, you did this, or oh, you did that, you always had a story of, oh yeah, that's when this happened, or oh, that's when that happened. And I just think it's that storytelling that people that people will always remember.
See, that's the thing is like the storytelling with that. Like, I don't want them to remember moves as much as I want them to remember moments and have that memory of that. Like, you think of these matches too, like what stands out the most? You mentioned the build, but also the finish to it.
Yeah.
This is when I use it as an example is Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, WrestleMania 2008, 24. What was the finish to that? I'm sorry, I love you, super kick.
Yeah.
How much more can you really remember about that match? How did they start? Like, you remember the finish though, without even thinking about it. You remember the finish. You remember that moment. You remember that memory. I want those type of things to stand out more than whatever dive I'm going to do in the match.
Yeah, definitely. I think again, they're the moments that will live on like fans' memories forever, whether it's children or stuff like that. Especially when they've been there throughout the journey, and it'll be interesting to see like what stories you get to tell next. Again, you mentioned the one where the pandemic had kind of stopped that, so hopefully that can happen, and you can see what kind of story you can tell for there. And yeah, just don't change that mentality. And I think that's why it would be good if you did do like open schools and stuff like that, just because of your understanding for storytelling. And again, it is the moments rather than the moves. For example, the whole Rock and Hogan. Like I grew up like I'm 27, so I grew up loving The Rock, but I used to always watch old videos, so I was always a Hogan fan as well. And when they finally collided, I was just a big kid. Like I loved it. But when I speak back and like talk about it, I'm always The Rock when he comes out and he's like, "You've headlined WrestleMania after WrestleMania after WrestleMania. How about you headline one more WrestleMania with The Rock?" And then it's always the moments that they're the moments you remember about the feuds. And it's what moments have you got as a fan where it's the moments that stand out for you?
So for me, as an Eddie Guerrero fan, it was when he won the championship against Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
And it was the story they told to that in such a short amount of time. Like, I'll watch that match back constantly and just think like everything that went into that. Like,
Yeah.
it was in such a quick moment because a month prior to that, nobody thought Eddie Guerrero was heavyweight champion.
No.
He was coming off the tag team thing. He did the quick thing with Chavo, but nobody thought, all right, this is the guy to beat Brock Lesnar next month. He had a different build than a lot of others. Like with Daniel Bryan, like he had the close to a year-long thing where it's like this build, and it's coming, and you know it. But Eddie Guerrero, it happened so quick, and it happened with a guy like Brock Lesnar who was on top. He was the big powerhouse, and at that time, he wasn't having those type of matches that he had with Eddie.
Yeah.
To where he had to sell for me. He sold the knee a lot during the match, and that was a big thing. They went to the one spot with the knee, and Brock would take back over. He'd powerhouse Eddie a little bit, and then they come back to the knee, and that was the big story they told until Goldberg comes in the spear, the DDT on the belt, the frog splash. So it was big to be able to watch as a fan Eddie Guerrero finally get that moment that he's been searching for in his career, and to have it happen so quick, because I always thought like one day Eddie Guerrero is going to be heavyweight champion. I just didn't know it was coming at that point. So that was what made me that much of a fan even more, and made me believe even more like this is the guy.
Yeah, definitely. And I know obviously things that followed with like Benoit always taints his career, but again, at that moment in time, that triple threat was, I thought, fantastic. Like everything aside with Benoit, and then again that moment where you've got those two like hugging, the confetti. You remember that more than the triple threat itself as well. And again, it is just those moments. And
Also those moments where the business was changing. Like before then, it was about The Rock and Austin, and then you had that moment with Eddie and Benoit on the ring. It's like, all right, these are the guys. This is the moment for a while. And then a year later, you have Cena and Batista. Like the business is constantly evolving year after year. They were creating new stars, and like that was one of my favorite eras in wrestling, where they were like Rock and Austin were leaving. They had to create those new stars, and like they have the stars of the future. And now it's time to do it again because those guys are getting older and they're gone.
What wrestling do you watch at the moment?
wrestling that I watch at the moment. I try to watch enough of the current product just to like have an idea of knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
AEW especially, like I have a lot of friends who have signed with the company, so it's fun to be able to see them on TV and see how far they've come and
Yeah.
be able to feel like I'm a part of that. But watch anything I can on the network. Yeah, everything's new each day. Yeah.
Yeah. I know, brilliant. But no, Vince, again, thank you for coming on. Like it's been great talking to you, and just like again, I don't often get to talk about like the storytelling and the moment side of things, so it's been good to talk about that. Like, where can people find you across social media?
On Facebook at Invincible Vince Valor. Instagram, Vinstagram31 is the handle.
Instagram.
Twitter, I'm at Vince Valor 31. I'm on Snapchat, I'm on Tinder, I'm on the Gmail, Vince Valor 31. Yeah.
Brilliant. I'll put those all in the descriptions. And again, Vince, thank you for coming on. Like, hopefully, like in the future, once you get a couple of those stories, and we can talk a little bit more about it all. And especially if you do end up getting that space to get up a ring and do something with Bill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, everybody, make sure you do go follow Vince on social media. The Instagram, that is amazing. I love that. I'm always one for puns. Like before, I like changed the name. I was Kurt's Angle.
Oh yeah.
So that I played on that, and I thought, right, I'm gonna change it just so like companies had an identity of who I was, and I think it was when I was doing stuff in Malaysia, people was expecting Kurt Angle to be there. So I was like, nope, just me. But that's amazing. So everybody do go follow Vince on social media. Make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe. Until next time.